Hi, welcome to Grat's Guide to Anything. This video is part of my series on running D&D 5th edition on Roll20. This is the first in a group that covers setting up the APIs to allow for Games Master and player menus to automate a lot of standard tasks. This first video will cover simply installing the required APIs and creating two special characters that you'll need to help in these automation tasks. The APIs that we're going to install are: number 1, 5th edition OGL by Roll20 companion script. Number 2, token mod script. Number 3, supernote script. So, what's our learning objective for this video? Well, you already have covered installing APIs, so that should part will just be revision. What will be new will be the creation of some NPCs, that is, non-player characters. So therefore, by the end of this video, you'll be able to create NPCs. Right, part 1, let's add those APIs. So for the first part, adding the APIs, our steps will be the normal steps. We research the script, we back up your game, install the scripts, configure scripts, and then sometime later we delete the backup. And as always, think about, do I need a 6th step? Train my customers. So first part, research the scripts. So for the 3 scripts, I'm going to go to the API index and look for them there. I'm going to go into the forum and search for them there, and then I'm going to go into the GitHub repository and I'm going to look for them there. Right, well, we'll do a quick fast forward of all of that stuff. Well, there's something going to stop us installing it, but a few things we need to read and note about. So that's completed. Next step is going to be backing up the game. So I go into my test game and the first thing I see is my last backup. Well, I'm happy with that script, so I'm going to delete the old backup and then create a new one. Right, now I'll copy our test game before I start. While that copies, I'm going to note a couple of things that were brought to my attention. Sometimes when you're copying your game, it doesn't carry over some settings. For other settings, they are never carried over. I'm not going to go into which is which, as this is a bit of a moving target. As the Roll20 developers fix these issues, they add these additions to the Roll20 platform and so on. Enough to say that you shouldn't expect a copy to be ready to rock. Whenever I make a copy, I check that the default sheet is correct. This is simply a habit that you need to get into. Read the forums and you'll see that a lot of problems people have is because the template is not set. I'm not going to get into arguments as to whether it sometimes doesn't, always doesn't, because again, it seems to be different experience for different people. but it means that whenever you do make a copy, or certainly if you go to use a copy as your new game, one of the things you need to do is make sure that the template is set. Secondly, APIs that are added via the library feature are currently not added. They will need to be manually re-added. Also, currently no script has its current state backed up. This means that you will need to reconfigure all scripts in the copied game. In addition, things like macros, background image, stuff like that may or may not be copied. Again, do your research, find out what isn't copied before you start. Also, if you want the forum post to be copied, you need to make sure that you tick that extra tick. By default, it's not. So after all of that, I'll add in one more comment. If you really do need to recover a game from before some disaster struck, like you accidentally deleting all the player characters, there's an option for pro accounts to roll back your game up to about a week. Again, it's in that configuration menu down the bottom. No, you can't change to a pro account, restore a backup from 4 days ago, and change back to a standard account. The pro backups are only done for the days where you actually have a pro account. Alright, now that we've got the backup out of the way, let's move on to the next option, which of course is to install the actual scripts. Now I'm going to install the 3 of them. So I'm going to click on settings, then select API scripts, and then for each of the 3 I'm going to bring down the list of scripts, select the one that I want, scroll down, click on add script, wait for a little while, look for errors, and then repeat for the next one. Alright, let's now look to configure the scripts. So we launch Grat's test game, and in chat we look for any messages from the scripts. Well, there is one. Supernotes wants us to change the default template if required, so let's select the D&D 5th edition by Roll20. Right, so what did we just do? I'm a bit confused. Well, what we've just done is a bit like one of those situations where you've actually done a lot, but it doesn't look like you have. It's a bit like planning to go on a road trip. So you get the car serviced, it's full of petrol, new deodorizer thing hanging from the rearview mirror. Roadside assistance paid up, all that sort of stuff. So from the outside, well, the car looks the same. But now everything is ready for your big adventure. The first of these 3 APIs was the 5th edition OGL by Roll20 companion script. This utility script is the backbone of being able to use script calls to the player character sheets and the non-player character sheets as well. This script is the underlying thing that's basically allowing all the automation that we're going to do in that regards. The next API was Token Mod. This is another utility script that handles the automation of a whole bunch of tasks around the tokens. Tokens is the name Roll20 gives for a little image, or big image in some cases, on the playing surface that represents something. The last API is Supernotes. This is another utility script that allows us to do some fancy things with GM notes. What's a GM note? Well, all the tokens and objects and maps and everything like that all has a field called GM notes where the GM makes notes. The thing about those notes is they're not visible to anyone except for a GM. So what this will allow us to do, or I should say what this API allows us to do, is to put into GM notes a whole stack of information which we don't necessarily want the players to see except under certain circumstances. When we get to that part of it, you'll get the feel for what you can use it for. But note that none of the above actually does much. They all extend Roll20 to allow us to add macros and provide macros that'll do stuff. Unlike our first API welcome package, these require a bit more work before we start to show benefits. Okay, part 2. Let's add ourselves some blank NPCs. We're going to add 2 NPCs that will become important for the macros we set up. Why? Because a bit of planning now will make things a whole lot easier later. We're going to be making a bunch of macros, but the macros have to be attached to something. If we have 2 NPCs that we use to attach all of our general macros to, this will mean that next time we want to include all this work in a game, we basically only have to copy these 2 NPCs in, and they'll bring all of the macros with them. It also means they're all in one location. So you do some changes, hey, yeah, I like this. You just need to import these into the game from whichever game you've done that work in, and you've got all these updated features. One I'm going to call GM Utils OGL, and the other one I'm going to call PC Utils OGL. The first one will contain all the utilities that I want the GM only to have access to, while the second one will contain anything that the players need access. Why split? Because I'm going to have to give the players permissions to be able to access PC Utils OGL. That means that they're going to be able to dig around a little bit themselves and, peep underneath the cover and find out what's swept under the carpet in the corner. I don't want them to do that with the GM stuff. So they will not have any rights at all for the GM Utils OGL NPC. The OGL at the end reminds me that these have been set up for the standard Roll20 template. If you remember way back in this set of videos, I talked about how the macros are different depending upon if you use the official Roll20 template or one of the other ones. And this is where that rubber meets the road. Right, let's get creating. So we launch our game. We select the Journal tab on the right. So let's start by adding a folder to put these NPCs in. I'm going to call it GM Stuff. So I'm going to click Add, select Folder, and give it the name GM Stuff. Simple. Now let's add a character. So we're going to again select Add Character, and then we're going to give it the name GM Utils OGL, and we're going to put a note in the GM note saying NPC to hold or GM macros. We then change to the Character Sheet tab, and you should see a prompt in the middle of the screen to use the character mancer. Click on the Edit Sheet Directly button. Now this won't be a real NPC, so you don't have to set all this junk up, but we need to tell the system that this is an NPC. So there's a little gear icon on the right next to Core Bio Spells. So click on the gear item, and the first item in the third column should say NPC, and we tick that box. Close the sheet, move the icon to the folder that you created. And they're going to repeat the whole process for PC Utils OGL, with a comment in the GM notes saying NPC to hold all player macros. And again, we're going to move that into the folder. Right. Well done. Everything is now ready for us to start automating next video. Yay! And that brings us to the end of this video. Thanks for watching Karat's Guide to Anything, and I'll see you next video.